Alright, so today's lab is going to be G-code. I just wanted to do a brief introduction, but um, then we'll get into it. I just wanted to go over why I decided to move lab online today. So, well, I think we've talked about it before. There's no SolidWorks, and you guys need books, right? So there's really nothing we can do in that lab right now, other than mess around more on the machine, which we will be doing this upcoming week especially. As well as I think I hope we don't have any more issues with SolidWorks next week. I've obviously got to push that project, so if you're wondering when that's due, I think originally I had it set for today, due today, but obviously I'm not going to do that. I got to update that. For for next week, I'm going to see what we can do if we're again without software. I don't know why it's taking so long to get this up and running this semester, but we can mess around with maybe we'll do this anyways, but our other machines there, so we can use some different software that is working with laser etchers, for some reason I'm drawing a blank on our other tools. That we do have some other CNC operated tools that we can use. So I'm going to develop those labs and get something up and ready for that for next week. So we won't run into this issue next week. But I just couldn't really see any reason for us to go to campus for sitting in front of a computer working on a piece of paper and probably not even using the computer. So that's why I've done it this way. If you guys have any questions on the lab, I'm going to run through it now. So today I just wanted to go over a G-code lab. So it's just going to be a simple NC numerical code. And we're going to do just simple linear interpolation. So just from point to point, right? So your job here initially will be to find out each one of these coordinates, right? And what I suggest doing for this, and you could even use Excel. I've had students use Excel for this before. But as you're trying to calculate this out, I know it's only, so for instance, point A is 3 over and 2 up, right? Well, that's all well and good, but we're not at x3, y2 because our grid is actually 0.125. So you're going to have to basically do a little bit of math. You can also use Excel. Let me just make a quick Excel worksheet just for an example. Alright, so for instance, I'm not going to do the whole thing obviously because this is your assignment, but for instance, A is at, we do X, Y, A is at our 3 position over, 2 positions up, right? And then after we convert it to what it actually is with the 0.125 grid, we could do our X, I don't know, just to make it different, X prime, Y prime. We have equals 3 times 0.125, and then you can just drag it, right? And if you have them all done, you can just kind of drag them all down, and it'll do it automatically for you. But this would be your actual first position. All right, and I'm going to give you an intro to the G code, since again we've had a brief introduction to G code, and I haven't gotten up another lecture yet for that. That was planned to be this next week, but it's gotten pushed up to this. And we will actually have more of a lecture on G code and more examples of circular interpolation. We haven't really gone to doing too much for examples yet. All right, so so I just opened up a notepad, just made a notepad. You can use Word if you want. The reason I use Notepad is because you can actually type up using just a text file and actually make a G code to where you just save it .nc instead of a .txt text file. And you can actually upload those to the CNC machines and it would run through your code. Today what we're going to do is we're going to type our own code up in a text-based file, And what you're going to do is make sure it hits all these points and does what it needs to do. And we're going to test this out on an online simulator. And what we're probably going to have to finish these up next week. There's a couple pointers that, yeah, I got to talk about as far as tool pickup and stuff like that. Maybe I'll do that briefly before the end of this lecture, but we can talk about that in lab next Tuesday. I'm calling this a lecture, but technically it's a lab. So we'll talk about this in next Tuesday's lab. If you have more questions on this, please do get as far as you can. So I expect at this point, after talking about our linear interpolations and what we go through today, you should be able to do coding the N and coding the C. As far as the pickup here, if you don't get that, that's fine. We'll talk about that next week. But what I would like you to do today is start out the G code, and I'm gonna also post up. Where did I put it? I have a PDF here somewhere of our handed out book, the book I handed out last week. Where the heck did I put that? Sorry, hang in there. Just gotta go to documents, downloads. There we go. Should have been up. I had this open for this specific reason. I love computers lately. It's been fun. Alright, so we want to go down to the G code, right? So we can start writing our G code. So just to get an example of what we need to get started, and typically what we get with the start, and you'll see this a lot, is we'll have N01 for the start line. That's just line numerical code 1, essentially line 1, and it's odd, but I'm gonna stick with N02, and it'll go up incrementally one by one. It's odd. I say it's odd because there's certain cases where you'll actually see they'll skip into tens for some reason, N10 to N20, and there's a reason for that. So if you were to manually change the G code, you can go in between, say, lines N10 through N20 and add some extra lines in there without having to reorder your lines, right? In this case, you can't really add an N01 and a half. It just doesn't exist. So that's really what those are for, the N numbers. So hopefully you have your book with you guys, and you can actually look at these codes here. Like I said, I'll put this up on Blackboard as well, so you have a digital edition. But getting this started, so we start with N01, then we look at our next code. And I did pull up one of the lectures I'll be talking about this upcoming week. But your common format of a block is your sequence, your number, what sequence you're in. Preparatory functions, so we have to prepare to do something. So in this case, they have G90, which is an absolute command, which I'm about to talk about. G01 is going to be our linear interpolation. Dimension words, so this is how you set your X and Y position. So X 1.4, Y 2.25. So we're going to do a linear interpolation from wherever we are. Maybe we're at 0, 0. We're going to go directly to X 1.4, Y 2.25. And that'll go in, that basically direct line directly to that point. This blue here is F. When you see F10 or F with a number, that's your feed rate, and that's how fast your tool will actually move across from point to point. Spindle function. This is how fast RPMs will turn that bit, and we'll actually do calculations for feeds and speeds. So that don't worry about that. Obviously, in this assignment, we don't have a material we're cutting really in this assignment. Tool function. So this tells us what tool we're using, and then miscellaneous function. Basically any machine function for turning on coolant and so on. All right, so starting out, looking at that block, we have our number, and we have to do our preparatory functions, right? So what are we going to use for preparatory functions just for this simple lab here? Well, we're going to do absolute. I'll let you guys do absolute for this one. G90. So we'll be using absolute, and there is I'll talk a little bit about it. We don't necessarily need it. Sometimes they run G80, so it's one thing you tend to see, and I think there's an example in here that does a similar function. What G80 does is cancels any canned functions. So canned functions, they, let's see if there's an example here. No, it doesn't really say. But canned functions are exactly kind of what they sound. They're a function that's been canned or saved. And what you're able to do with those is you're able to reuse those. And then you save them on the machine for drilling operations, tap and die operations, so on. Back to the G code go. Sorry for making anybody dizzy for sliding back and forth. So the G80 is actually a way to cancel those canned functions. Sorry, I kind of got off topic there. So you want a can cycle cancellation. So basically, if there was a can cycle running before this, you'd want that cycle stopped. So that's, you know, something you can run. If you see G80, that's what they're doing. They're stopping a previously canned cycle. And then for this one, I'm going to just put tool 01. So the first tool we have. And if we were going to actually change tools, you know, that'd be a different G. I think G03 or M03. G03 is circular interpolation, so it must be like M number. I gotta review that as well. I don't necessarily expect you guys to memorize each one of these functions, so that's why I'm giving you the book. So that's our first, just starting out. You know, this is our starting line right here. We have first line, absolute control. We're stopping canned functions, and we're using tool 1. Something else you can add to this top line, and it'll stay the same throughout, is the feeds and speeds. So as long as you don't change your feed and speed command, the feed and the speed of the tool will stay the same. So in this case, I asked for spindle speed of S1000 and a feed rate of 5 inches per minute. So we're going to do a F5, 5 inches per minute, and we're going to do a spindle speed of S1000. Alright. Now I say use the rapid move to home at 031. I'm trying to remember what the rapid to work. So that's G00, rapid traverse motion. So in this case, on line 2, G00, and our origin is technically, well, rapid home. We'll just say this is our home. So basically above the part. So X0 here. The tool's 3 inches up, 1 inch above the part. Right, so we're kind of starting up above the part. So our G00 command will be to X0 space. You can do a space or a 0.0. As long as you get a 0 in there, it's good. Y00. Like I said, I could leave these just 0. I think I will for clarity. And then Z0. Or, sorry. Follow my own instructions here. It was Z1, Y3, X0. So those are our 3 instructions. G00 will move us wherever we are to that point. Rapid move. And really this is probably not a great example of what to do in a real world example, because if you don't know where your tool is, you're not going to want to rapid move to anywhere until you know where that tool is. In this case, what we want to do is we want to be above the part before we get started. N03, line 3. So here we're going to want to move to point A, right? Point A is going to be moved to point A. G01, X we mentioned was at 0.375. I mean, you can write 0.375 if you'd like. And then Y of 0.25. And I'm going to keep my Z at 1. Because what we want to do is we basically want to hover over where we do this, right? So when we go into the part, you don't necessarily want to just say go down to that depth, because what it's going to be doing is it's going to be moving from, say, wherever our 0, 3, 1 position is. It's going to move directly in a linear interpolation to that. And if you say Z0, for instance, go down to, say, our origin at the base of this part, and just bury itself right into the aluminum or whatever you're trying to cut. So we want to hover over where we want to start right here, and then we're going to move down into that, right? So this is typically where you're going to end up using a different kind of function, actually. So you're not going to necessarily want to bury the tool right into the point where you want it. This is typically where you're going to change your feeds and speeds, and Mastercam is nice because it does that for you. So you can tell it, you know, basically, well, kind of does it for you. You tell it how fast you are, how big of a cut you want to take out, and then it does all the rest. So in this case, we want to go down to Z0, or sorry, half-inch deep, right? Left-hand corner, 0.5 inches deep. Start from the lower left-hand corner. So if we're going down half an inch, we go down to 0.5. So we start this point, we move just down. So notice the only change here is that we're moving to Z0.5. And as I mentioned in the other class, we could leave this, and I think I will leave it for clarity. But the nice thing about G-code is you're currently at this position. You only really have to tell it what you're changing to. So if you're only going down in the Z height of 0.5, you only have to tell it to do that. For this case, just to keep things clear and easy, I'm going to keep that. So it's going to go down to part A, or point A, at half an inch depth from the top of the stock. We'll just say the top of the stock's at 1 inch. Even again, we'd be hitting the top of the stock with these moves here, so we could move that above that point, but we'll leave it as is right now. I'm just trying to convey how to do G coding. N05. So now line 5, we're at point A at the depth we want. Now we want to move to point B, right? We want to make the tool path now. We're going to go to point D. We're going to lift up, move to point C, follow the tool path all the way around, doing G01 commands. So again, they're all linear, right? So we just use G01 all the way down. So just to give one more example, so B we're how many lines up here? So we're 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So our Y is at 14. Our X hasn't changed, right? So it's 3. Use that. And again, all this is doing is multiplying these by 0.125. So our next point is going to be at 0.25 and Y of 1.75. So we're going to go ahead and add that. So point G01. As I mentioned, X isn't going to change, 0.375, and Y is going to go to 1.25, 1.75. And then Z isn't going to change, so we can leave Z at 0.15. So you can add that if you want, or you can use just the Z commands when you're trying to do lift and lower operations. All right, so that gives us, you know, A to D, A to B, and again, you just keep going along that line. So you kind of follow the G01 commands all the way through. And then again, lift up here at D, because you don't want to cut through all this when you're moving to this point, right? You cut right through that C. So you have to lift up to 1 inch. In this case, we'll just stick with 1 inch. Move over to the beginning portion of C, and then follow through to L. Yeah, E through L for C. But that's the general idea. So I want you to save your code. You can test it as well. I don't know if something I should have opened was a good G code tester. NC viewer, one I've used before. So say you wanted to see your G code, right? So this is like information we don't need. What you can do is you can copy and paste right into one of these G code testers. So let's see what this looks like here. We're gonna plot that. So if you notice, which button was it? We were up here kind of to begin with, and we're moving down above where we wanted to start the end, moved down into the first portion of the end, and then moved up to point B, right? So if you finish this, you should see an N, a lift up, go over to the C, and then around to the C. So that's a good way to check to see if your G code's working correctly. And I'll post a link to one of those G code testing sites. It's really literally the first thing that comes up on Google search. But that's the explanation for this lab. So this is what we were going to do in lab today. Again, I didn't really see a point to doing this in class when we're trying to social distance and keep things from spreading, right? Let me know if you have any questions, concerns. We can always review this on next Tuesday when we meet. We will be having lab next week. I also found out, and I'll post this in announcements with it, in text announcement, but I was told today that the books are in. So if you don't have a book yet, please go to the bookstore and grab your book, because I would like to get onto Mastercam. So we have the Mastercam software, we just don't have the book. So that's where kind of we're stuck at that point. So please, if you get the books, we can jump right into doing our Mastercam assignments. All right, that's what I wanted to go through. I'll see you guys next week. Hope you have a great weekend, and yeah, I'll be talking at you here soon with another lecture video. All right, later.